If elected, what will you do to sunset the current utility tax?
Well, we'd have to make sure that our other sources of revenue are going to offset the reduction of the utility tax. And so, you know, we took that utility tax and made it from 2% to 4%, which was commensurate with the town of Marana, the town of Sahuarita, still lower than the city of Tucson. And with that, and plus the expenses that we did, we went from a $3 million deficit to a surplus. So I would work hard to do that, but it's got to be replaced by something. What my plan on is to continue the success of sports tourism, continue the path of arts and culture, continue to get other people to come invest in our town. And I will tell you, 32 cents on every dollar is paid by an outsider. The quality of your life, you only pay 68 cents on the dollar. What my plan is in the next 4 years is to continue down that path and have that number be 47, 48, 49, 50 cents on the dollar, so a dollar is not a dollar to you.
If re-elected, what will you do to sunset the current utility tax?
Sunset the utility tax. Utility tax, sales tax, bed tax, that's all we got. We were able to spend $2.1 million to bury those TEP power lines that were going to run down our declared scenic corridor. We got $2.1 million into the beginning of Naranjo Park, it's now called. It's not the town site now, it's a park. We're able to do some things with the very scant resources we have, and we have to count on, as the mayor says, our sports tourism program. 2/3 of the sales taxes come from people outside of our community. So we're just having to draw more people into our community to help us with that. There's not going to be any sales tax. It's revenue streams generated by the projects we have, including our aquatic facility, which is well on its way to what was proposed, a $2 million a year revenue stream for us with national events that we are now actively courting.
Adding the additional 2% utility tax was a difficult decision to make, but we made it in difficult times. We were faced with a big deficit. We took an approach of reduced expenditures and slightly increasing revenues. When I first took office, we had an economic summit with our business leaders, our education leaders, our nonprofit leaders. And the one thing they told us was, you need to diversify your revenue sources. Many towns and cities found themselves in trouble when they are only relying on sales tax revenue. And that's one of the things we learned through the recession. If we do reduce that, we have to replace it with something else. Sports tourism is a great way to do it. But let me just tell you one more thing. The general fund that I told you, one of the 3 funds, that fund pays all the bills for the town, with the exception of water and roads. Everything else is paid out of that. Our town manager did a calculation of the number of households in Oro Valley. That cost is $378 a year per household to live in Oro Valley. I would say that that's $31.20 a month or $1 a day to pay the bills in Oro Valley. If you want to be a community of excellence, I think I'm willing to do that.
I can't stand here and tell you that I wouldn't consider the sunset of the utility tax, but everybody's right. You got to replace it with something. If you're familiar with structural debt or structural budgets, we didn't have a good structural budget. That extra 2% gave us a reliable income stream. Not something that's sales tax that fluctuates up and down as the economy goes up and down. It's a reliable income stream. The cost to the average bill here, I think we estimated, was $7 or $8 a month. It certainly is a lot less than some of the other things that we would consider for taxes. And if you've got a revenue replacement for that, hey, listen, I don't have a problem with that, but somebody's going to have to come up with that. Thank you.
At the time the town increased the sales tax, put in the revenue increase on the utilities, that probably generated about $1.2 million in extra dollars for us. We also saw the reserve increase, or our budget under by $3 million. And that would have been a good time to say, well, maybe we should give it back. But unfortunately, what's happened since then is we're balanced budget, but it's diminishing. That 35% we talked about in our general fund reserve is now down to 25% by next year, this fiscal year. And that's right now the policy is the minimum. And as I said, a very unreliable source of revenue is sales tax. And so if you can't really give up a reliable source at this time because we're already on an economic slippery slope as it is.
Okay, it's all been said, maybe, but my view of this is it was billed as a temporary tax. I think the council has every responsibility to make moves to retire that tax. It shouldn't be, oh, gee, we need to do it this year. It should have been when we put it in place, what are we going to do ultimately when it needs to expire? Economic development, could have been bringing additional revenue in, and I'm not saying we haven't had it, and I'm not looking at taking away any of the amenities that we all rely on, including all of them that have been stated, but we very seldom talk about there is a revenue source that's called less expenditure, and less expenditure does not necessarily mean less services. You got to look at it honestly and see where our money's going, and that might be part of the solution.